Looking live at the National News Desk's Control Room C, where we're going to be talking about the election results of the elections in Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, and other places. Jeff Harris, who was just on the air for the National News Desk, he's going to come in and join me. We're going to look at what was Trump's effect on the elections this evening. Where do each of the parties go in the wake of the results? We've got some interesting results in terms of Democrats winning in both New Jersey and Virginia. Jeff Harris joining me.
Hey.
And we're going to break the races down here. Where do you want to start?
I want to take this out quickly, just because we were talking about...
Welcome.
Thank you. So I want to ask you this, because when we were talking earlier this week about the races and when we thought they were going to be called, I want to ask you this, like, do you think they would be called this early on in the night?
No, well, I mean, I think there was a sense based on polling going into the night that these were going to be tighter races. Maybe not Virginia. I think the sense in Virginia was that Spanberger was not going to have that much trouble against Winsome Earl Sears, even though the Republican candidate, the Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin's still fairly popular in the state of Virginia. It didn't translate to his lieutenant governor, Earl Sears. That one got called really early. I think that's not a surprise to people. New Jersey, all the polls had the same within
the margin of error leading
within the
up
margin
to
of error. I think there's a bit of a surprise there. I don't know what the answer is on that. I think pollsters who are polling in New Jersey, now keep in mind, New Jersey's not a battleground state when it comes to midterms or presidential elections. And so there's not a lot of statewide New Jersey polling at this level. And I'm wondering if pollsters are going to look back and do a little post-mortem about what went wrong with their polling this time around. My sense is they probably oversampled Republicans and got a sense that there were probably more Republicans or more people going to vote Republican this time around than last time. And part of the issue is Trump did close the gap in 2024. He won by 6 points.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, the three prior elections, presidential elections in New Jersey, the Democrat won by an average of 16 points. And it looks like Cheryl is getting closer to that than the 6-point victory for Harris.
2024 was the closest since 2004 from what I was seeing.
Right, and so that may say more about Kamala Harris as a candidate last year than the sense that New Jersey is moving to the right. So maybe that's what we're learning this year. So that was a bit of a surprise. New York, it's hard to say why they're calling it early. They're counting really quickly. I think Cuomo maybe didn't tighten up the results like people thought they were going to, and you know. So yeah, we're talking about calls at 10 o'clock at night, which I think maybe we thought we were going to be here 11 midnight before we got some of the calls.
What does this mean for Democrats moving forward? I'm seeing, you know, obviously different networks here, they're talking about this big Democratic push, and a lot of people are saying big win for Democrats tonight. What do you think?
Well, of course, all the headlines are going to say big win, but keep in mind the foundational issue here is you've got three really blue areas: New York City, New Jersey, which is a very blue state at its core, and Virginia, which is trending blue and has been trending blue for the last couple of decades. So we've now reset back to where the Democrats should be performing in these places. That's what we've seen tonight. But that doesn't, I'm not taking anything away from Democrats. They used a couple of issues that they ran on successfully: the economy and President Trump. Now, if you look at the exit polls, voters, at least in New Jersey, in fact in all three, said that Trump was not a factor in their selection for governor.
That's what the exit poll showed.
Correct. And in New York, 60% of New York voters said Trump was not a factor in their vote, which is fascinating because Trump, everybody just assumed Trump was going to be a big part of this. However, the economy was the top issue for all the voters in all of these states. And clearly Democrats are hitting a nerve as the party out of power, saying we can do a better job in the economy than the Republicans who are in power. They were in power in Virginia, they're in power nationally. So Democrats are going to take away from this, one, some enthusiasm. At this moment in time, more Democrats are enthusiastic about moving forward in terms of voting. And also that they've got an issue to run on, which is the economy.
Messaging, yeah.
Right. However, Republicans are looking at this and saying the Democrats they still don't know their path forward in terms of what their policies are going to be. New York is electing a Democratic Socialist mayor on the far left of the party, which is outside the mainstream of where even most Democrats are. And if you look at the exit polling, most people don't identify as socialists or Democratic Socialists in the Democratic Party, even in New York City. So that's going to be the brand that the Republicans are gonna try to tar the Democrats with from today, moving all the way through next November. So Republicans are like, fine, let the Democrats have their headlines the day after the election, but for the next year, we're gonna be calling every Democrat running for Senate and the House a Democratic Socialist, and we're gonna make them answer for what Zohran Mamdani is gonna do as the mayor of New York in terms of his policies and how he runs that city. He's gonna be the face, just like Nancy Pelosi used to be the face of midterms, in previous midterms for Republicans and Democrats. They're gonna use Mamdani against Democrats, and they're gonna try to paint Democrats as far outside the mainstream as they possibly can.
And that's not some surprising new development that Republicans are gonna come up with that strategy. That's something that they've been talking about. If he wins, President Trump has said that, this is how everyone's going to view the Democratic Party moving forward, especially as we get into the midterms.
Absolutely, Trump has been talking about this for weeks. He's been calling Mamdani a communist, not even a socialist, but a communist. If they can label Democrats as communists in battleground states, that could have a real negative effect on Democrats sort of getting out of their own way, because again, there's no leader of the Democratic Party right now. There's no president, there's no person that Democrats can say, this is who we're gonna follow in terms of policy from a national standpoint. So you've got a guy who just won overwhelmingly in New York City, or looks like it's gonna be,
Votes are coming in, yeah, but it's big.
50%, big win, and he's gonna be the guy that they're gonna say, these are the policies that we think Democrats gonna be following moving forward, and they're gonna have to answer for those policies. And Democrats in battleground states say, no, we're gonna try to distance ourselves from Zohran. I mean, you've got Democratic leaders now distancing themselves from Mamdani. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, didn't endorse his fellow New Yorker, who was the nominee of the Democratic Party in New York City for the mayor's race, didn't endorse him. Because he knows, going into the midterms, that's gonna be a problem for Democrats. And Trump and Republicans are gonna try to take full advantage of that.
Did Hakeem Jeffries come out and endorse him at the last minute?
At the
or
last
I thought
minute.
he was shaky?
It was shaky.
It was shaky.
But again, the trepidation among Democratic leaders in Congress to stand next to this guy and endorse him, because they know what that image is
What
going
it's
to be
gonna
for the
mean in a
next
year,
year.
yeah, 365.
If you don't think that images of Jeffries and Mamdani standing next to each other are going to be used against the party over the next year, then you're fooling yourselves. This is what the Republicans are going to dig in on. And so, again, this is where the Democrats in the long game are going to have a bigger hill to climb in terms of defining themselves, because Republicans are going to spend a lot of time defining them based on what happened in the New York mayoral race.
So some of the CNNs are talking about Mamdani, some of the polling that was coming in that I saw, that Mamdani, at least as of, I guess, right around 9:30, young voters showing up to vote for Mamdani, that were huge.
It's not a surprise, and this actually in the exit polls, I thought there was an interesting nugget. Okay, they asked voters what their top candidate quality was, right? Half the people said brings needed change or works for people like me. Okay, so half of New York voters said those were the top two qualities. Of those half, Mamdani won overwhelmingly on those issues, which is it's sort of a harkening back to when Barack Obama won with Hope and Change in 2008. He sold a message. He sold a message to young voters, especially to female voters in New York, that what's going on in New York isn't working. You had Eric Adams, who's unbelievably unpopular, Democratic mayor of New York, unpopular in the city. You had Bill de Blasio before him, who was extremely unpopular. And it's a Democratic city, so they're of course going to vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is most likely. And in this case, it was Mamdani. And they felt that his messaging on this, of bringing change and working for the average New Yorker, he sold that message and sold it well. And it was about, I think, 2/3 of the voters who said those were the top two qualities, they voted for Mamdani.
We just talked about this on air because my entire story tonight was talking about national implications of the races that we just discussed. So we're talking about New York City, we're talking about Virginia, and then also New Jersey. Part of that was Obama coming out. I know he said even this week that Mamdani could be a quote. I believe it was a sounding board for him if he won it.
Right. Obama notably did not come out and endorse him directly.
Right.
Which is, again, a notable omission from the... Democrats are distancing themselves just enough from this guy because they know that this is going to be a Republican talking point for the next year.
So what's the significance of Obama? Yes, he's distancing himself, but he's also somewhat connecting himself by calling, and of course it's being talked about.
Yeah, I mean, look, Obama is, I think, again, there's a lack of popular national Democratic figures. Look at the just recent years. You had Joe Biden, who left office extremely unpopular. You had Kamala Harris, who underperformed, I think, in Democrats' eyes in the presidential election last year. People are not clamoring for those two to come in and be the closer.
Sure.
And so you go back to the last successful, Hillary Clinton was not a successful candidate for Democrats. Who was the last successful national candidate? Barack Obama. So you bring him in to be the closer. That's only natural. What's interesting is, I'm not sure what that brings, other than hardcore Democratic voters, just reminding them, get out there and vote. It's important, trying to boost enthusiasm among Democrats. They may have helped in the short term. I don't know what that does long term for the Democrats. Again, they've got to figure out what the direction is, clearly stating to the American people, especially in battleground states, what their policies are and where they're going as a party moving forward. They have not done that. They have not done that since Joe Biden said he was not going to run for re-election. I don't think Kamala Harris made a very clear case to Americans, and I think that was part of her problem in November last year, and I think in the year since, Democrats have not done that. And who is the leader of the Democratic Party between now and next November who's going to do that? I don't have an answer for you. There isn't a clear answer. Is it Chuck Schumer? Is it Hakeem Jeffries? Because they've been trying for the last year and have not been doing that. Republicans are going to say it's Zoran Mamdani.
Or individuals like Zoran Mamdani.
Right. And then that's where Democrats are going to have to play this game of playing defense instead of going on the offense to say, these are what our policies are versus Donald Trump and the Republicans.
And they're seeing some progressive socialists emerge in other areas of the country as well that are running for office, Minneapolis, others as well. So yes, everybody, all eyes, first race to kind of drop Zoran Mamdani, going to be the mayor-elect, New York City. But others are emerging here across the country as well.
Right, and the Democrats may be falling into the trap that they fell into in 2019, right? When they were trying to figure out who was going to be the nominee in 2020 for the presidential election. And they started creeping to the left and creeping to the left and creeping to the left to the point where they started talking about defunding the police and healthcare for all, government-run healthcare, and all this stuff that's not popular with battleground voters. Are they going to go that way now that you've got Democratic socialists in New York and potentially in these other cities? I don't know, but it's going to be hard for them to run away from those issues when you have actual elected officials who are running large cities doing these kinds of things and saying and putting forward these kinds of policies, and the absence of national Democrats with alternatives to these issues. So I think you're going to start to see this fight again among Democrats who want to have more mainstream, moderate ideas out there versus the people who are actually in office putting in place very lefty ideas.
So it kind of seems like tonight too is it's like I don't want to say it's like a catch-22, like very positive for the Democratic Party. You're winning elections, but at the same time, we're kind of getting a glimpse here of just what the future could look like leading up to the midterms.
Yeah, they've got enthusiasm, they've got voters who are excited about at this moment in time, but they've got a year to figure out what their policies are going to be and what their message is going to be, and if they can't do that, it's not going to be as easy as it was today, next year.
I was looking at the clock. I know you and I both got to get ready to get back on air. So
great chatting.
We'll be back here. We'll be back here in a little bit because I'm really interested to see how the results start to kind of fall in. Yes, they're being called, but I want to see the final tallies and then the breakdowns as well.
Absolutely. Great.